The night still clings to the village, long before the first light of dawn, when the sky remains a deep, endless shade of indigo. A small mud brick house breathes in silence. Its walls, built by hand from Nile silt and straw, are cool to the touch, holding the memory of the river's moisture within their earthen embrace. Outside, the world is hushed, save for the distant croak of a frog or the occasional shuffle of a restless donkey. But within these walls, life stirs gently, not with urgency, but with the quiet patience of a world that has always known this rhythm. The house is small. One single room, open and humble, its ceiling low and thatched with woven palm leaves. The floor beneath is hardened earth, swept smooth by countless days of careful hands tending to its surface. Against one wall, simple storage jars stand like silent sentinels, their clay bellies filled with barley and emmer wheat. Reed baskets sit nearby, holding dates, onions, and a few precious figs dried in the sun. Yet, in this moment, these things remain still. The only motion comes from the slow, almost imperceptible rise and fall of breath, as the family, wrapped in thin linen sheets, begins to emerge from the last lingering threads of sleep. A mother moves first. Her breath deepens, her body shifting slightly beneath the light cover. Her hand, roughened by years of kneading dough and grinding grain, reaches out to steady herself as she sits upright. She does not speak. Words are unnecessary here. She listens to the silence, to the faint rustle of palm fronds outside, to the subtle creak of woven reed mats beneath her as she adjusts her legs. Her hair, loosely bound the night before, falls over her shoulder as she rises, barefoot, to greet the coolness of the floor. The air inside the home is heavy with the scent of dust, not the harsh, choking dust of parched lands, but the soft, earthy dust of life lived close to the ground. It mingles with the faintest hint of ash from last night's fire, now long since burned down to cold embers. In a corner of the room, a small idol of Taret, the household protector, stands perched upon a shelf. Carved from worn wood, she smiles, with her round hippo-like face, watching over the home with a quiet presence as old as time itself. A child stirs next. His small body shifts beneath the linen, one hand reaching up to rub sleep from his eyes. He does not cry out. He does not yawn loudly. Instead, he nestles into the crook of his blanket, peering through heavy eyelids at the dim outlines of his mother moving through the room. He watches as she lifts a small clay jar to her lips, taking a careful sip of water gathered from the well the night before. The water is cool, having sat overnight in the earthen vessel, drawing the heat away in exchange for the night's chill. The father remains still for a few moments longer. His body, accustomed to the labor of farming, is slow to rise, muscles easing, into the movement of a new day. He shifts his weight, stretching his arms out wide, and exhales a deep, contented breath. His feet find the ground, solace pressing against the familiar texture of compacted earth, and he sits quietly, gathering his thoughts in the way that he has done every morning for as long as he can remember down above. Through a small opening in the wall, no more than a narrow slit, a faint glow begins to filter in. It is not yet sunlight, but the promise of it, a soft gray light that announces the sun's approach long before it crests the horizon. This in-between time when night has not fully departed and day has not yet arrived holds a particular kind of stillness. It is a moment suspended, a pause in the turning of the world where everything waits. The earth, the river. The people in quiet anticipation dot in the courtyard outside. A faint breeze stirs the reed fencing. The breeze carries with it the sense of the river, damp, sweet, and ever-present. Somewhere beyond, a neighbor's rooster murmurs a low, questioning crow, as if unsure whether it is yet time to announce the morning. A pair of pigeons, nestled in the crevices of a mud brick wall, shuffle their feathers with soft coos, their wings brushing against the rough texture of clay. The family moves slowly, in no rush. The mother checks the woven basket where yesterday's bread has been kept, ensuring it is free from unwelcome insects. The father reaches for a wooden staff. Leaning against the wall, running his fingers along its familiar grain. The child, still drowsy, follows his mother's lead, beginning to fold away the reed mat that had served as his bed. These tasks are simple, instinctive, requiring no thought. They are not burdensome chores, but gentle rituals that ease the body into ULKEFULNSS dot in a corner of the courtyard. A small clay brazier is prepared. The mother arranges a few dried twigs and handfuls of straw, coaxing a tiny flame to life with the practiced breath of someone who has done this more times than she can count. The fire crackles softly, offering a warm, flickering light that dances along the mud brick walls, casting gentle shadows that sway with the breeze. The glow is not yet needed for warmth. The air remains pleasantly cool in these early hours, but it is a comfort, a sign that the heart of the home has awakened. As the flame steadies, the mother places a small pot upon the brazier, warming water for the day's first tasks. She hums, barely audible, a simple tune passed down from her own mother, a song of mornings and sunrises. The melody weaves itself into the fabric of the morning, blending with the crackle of fire, the whisper of the wind, and the slow shuffle of her husband's footsteps as he steps into the courtyard. The father pauses at the threshold, taking a long breath. He inhales the familiar blend of dust and dawn, and for a moment, he simply stands, his silhouette framed by the muted light. His eyes follow the curve of the distant horizon, where the first hints of gold begin to lace the edge of the sky. He knows that soon Ray will rise, his solar bark ascending to flood the world with warmth and light. But for now, the sun is still hidden, and the day remains theirs, soft and unhurried. The mother, with a small smile, hands him a date from a nearby basket. Sweet, sticky, a small gesture of connection in the early hush. He takes it, and together, they share the simple sweetness in silence, savoring the smallness of the moment. The child, now fully awake, joins them, his fingers reaching for his own treat, his face lighting up with quiet contentment as he bites into the chewy fruit. Within these walls, the day does not begin with noise or urgency. There are no bells, no alarms, no loud proclamations. The world turns slowly, gently nudging its inhabitants into motion with soft cues. The shift of light, the coolness of air against skin, the comforting repetition of hands preparing hearth and home. It is a rhythm older than the pyramids, older than the gods themselves, a rhythm of life shaped by the earth and river. Patient and unchanging as the sky brightens, the family begins their final preparations. The father collects the tools he will need for the fields: a simple hoe, a wicker basket, a rope sling for carrying bundles of reeds. The mother gathers a small satchel with grain for grinding later in the day. The child assists in small ways, fetching a gourd of water, tidying away sleeping mats, adjusting the placement of a protective amulet near the doorway. These actions, though modest, are done with care, each one part of the seamless flow of life in this modest dwelling. A faint murmur rises from the neighboring homes as other families begin to stir, their own routines mirroring this one. The village breathes as one, each household a quiet echo of the other, all preparing for the sun's inevitable rise. Outside, the path leading toward the fields awaits, its dusty surface soon to be marked by the day's first footprints. But for now, within a small mud brick home, the family remains wrapped in the lingering stillness of morning's earliest breath. Soon, the first rays of sunlight will spill across the Nile, turning its surface into liquid gold. Soon, the voices of boatmen will carry across the water, and the fields will call their workers forth. But in this moment, this delicate, fleeting moment before Ray takes his place in the sky, the family lingers within the quiet sanctuary of their home. They savor the breath between night and day, where the world feels smaller, more intimate, and time seems to hold its breath. And so, as the last shadows of night begin to recede, and the horizon blushes with the first warm glow of sunrise, life within the mud brick walls stirs softly, calmly stepping into the gentle rhythm of another day in ancient Egypt. The first light does not announce itself with grandeur. It comes softly, like a breath exhaled over the land, a gradual easing of the darkness that has blanketed the village through the night. To the east, where the Nile meanders like a sleeping serpent, the sky begins to change. What was once a deep, infinite indigo now lightens, first to a muted gray, then a tender wash of pale gold. The silhouettes of date palms, standing tall and serene, sharpen against the awakening sky, their fronds gently swaying in the faintest whisper of a morning breeze. From the doorway of a small mud brick home, a man stands watching. His figure is still, his arms folded loosely across his chest, as though embracing the hush that holds the village in its grip. Beside him, his wife steps forward, her bare feet, quiet against the cool earth. She carries with her a small woven basket, cradling inside a few dates and a tiny clay cup filled with beer, not for themselves, not yet, but for the spirits who watch over this home, this family, this life that begins anew with every rising sun. She kneels near the entrance, where a modest household shrine stands, a simple niche carved into the wall, holding small wooden effigies of Bere and Toret. The deities are humble in form, worn smooth from years of reverent touch, yet in this quiet moment, they seem to embody a presence as vast and eternal as the river itself, dot, with hands practiced and unhurried. She arranges the offerings, a date gently placed before the idols, the beer poured with careful precision into a tiny bowl. She murmurs a prayer, not loud, not formal, but soft and intimate, like a secret shared between old friends. It is a prayer for protection, for health, for the safe passage through another day beneath the ever-watchful gaze of Ra. The words do not change from day to day. They are ancient, familiar, as much a part of the morning as the rising light itself. Beyond the home, the river stirs. Its surface, once shrouded in shadow, begins to shimmer with delicate threads of light, weaving golden patterns that dance atop the gentle current. The boats, simple wooden skiffs tethered to the muddy banks, rock softly, their hulls creaking in a slow, rhythmic chorus. From across the water, faint voices drift on the breeze, the boatmen rising early to prepare for their day's work. Their songs are low and measured, a kind of chant that echoes across the stillness, blending with the soft slap of water against wood. It is a sound that belongs to the river, a melody that has been sung for generations, flowing alongside the Nile's eternal journey. The man watches, his gaze following the glint of light as it slides along the river's curve. He knows the sun is near, just beyond the edge of the world, preparing to lift its golden face above the horizon. But he does not rush to meet it. Instead, he lets the moment stretch, savoring the final breath of night before the warmth returns. Around him, the village begins to stir in subtle ways. A dog barks once, a sharp sound quickly swallowed by the stillness. From a neighboring courtyard, the soft clang of a bronze vessel echoes as a woman draws water from a clay jar. These are not disruptions, but gentle notes in the morning's quiet symphony. Each sound a thread in the fabric of daily life as the light strengthens. The colors of the world return, not suddenly, but with the soft insistence of something ancient and inevitable. The mud brick walls, which moments ago seemed gray and lifeless, now glow with a soft amber hue, their surfaces warming under the sun's first caress. The palm fronds overhead catch the light in their slender fingers, casting delicate patterns onto the earth below. Shadows stretch long and graceful across the village paths, their edges crisp and defined in the clarity of morning dot. The woman, having finished her offering, rises slowly. She brushes her hands together, a small habitual gesture, and turns toward the river. There's no need for words between her and her husband. They stand together in silence, sharing the simple act of watching the world awaken. The air carries with it the scent of damp earth, mingling with the faint sweetness of flowering papyrus. It is a scent that speaks of life, of water, of soil, of things that grow and sustain across the fields. A heron lifts into the sky, its wings outstretched, gliding effortlessly against the canvas of soft gold and pale blue. Its cry, sharp yet distant, marks the moment when night finally releases its hold. And with that, Ray ascends. The first arc of sunlight crests the horizon, blinding in its brilliance, yet softened by the morning haze. It is a slow, deliberate rise, as if the sun itself is reluctant to break the tranquility of the moment. The man bows his head, raising his hands in a gesture of respect. Not a grand, temple-born salute, but a humble acknowledgement of the sun's return. In his heart, as in the hearts of all who live along the Nile, there is an understanding, a quiet reverence for the daily miracle of the sun's journey. Without rise light, there's no life, no harvest, no river to feed the land. Each sunrise is both a blessing and a promise, and this small act of gratitude is as much a part of the morning as the breath he draws. The boatmen's songs grow louder now, their voices rising with the light. They haul their nets, prepare their oars, setting out onto the water as they have done every day of their lives. The rhythmic splash of oars dipping into the river becomes a steady counterpoint to the soft murmur of villagers greeting one another as they step out into the growing light. The world is awakening, yet it does so with a slowness that feels eternal, as if time itself stretches and elongates in these early hours dot in the courtyard. The small fire kindled before dawn still crackles, its flames now catching the sunlight and glowing brighter in response. The woman adds a few more twigs, coaxing the embers to life, preparing to warm the water that will be used to clean the day's first meal. The child, now fully awake, sits on a low stool, watching as his mother works. He yawns, but it is not a yawn of complaint. It is a soft, lingering breath, a sign of ease, of comfort in the predictability of these moments. The sky above the river now blazes with light. The golden disk of Ra has fully emerged, casting its reflection upon the Nile's surface, so that the river itself seems aflame. A liquid path of gold stretching into the distance. The palm trees no longer stand in silhouette, but sway gently, their fronds vivid in shades of green that shimmer beneath the sun's gaze. The mud brick homes glow warmly, their surfaces absorbing the light, reflecting it in a subtle radiance that fills the village with life as the sun climbs. To shift. The coolness of dawn recedes, replaced by the first hints of warmth that will, in time, become the full embrace of midday. But for now, it is a perfect balance, not cold, not yet hot, but a tender warmth that kisses the skin and makes the heart beat a little slower. A little more contentedly, the family prepares to step into the flow of the day. The man adjusts. The linen sash around his waist secures his staff and exchanges a quiet glance with his wife. The child tugs gently at his mother's hand, eager to follow, yet unhurried in his steps. Together they move toward the path that leads to the fields, their silhouettes merging with those of their neighbors. All of them part of the slow procession of life guided by the sun's steady arc, and yet, even as they move, they carry with them the quiet of the morning's first light, a calmness that lingers in the heart, long after the shadows have shortened and a day's labor begins. For in ancient Egypt, life does not rush toward the future. It unfolds in cycles, in patterns as fluid and enduring as the Nile itself. Each sunrise is not a beginning, but a continuation, a seamless thread in the eternal weave of existence. As the family walks, the world hums softly around them. The river murmurs, the breeze carries the scent of wet earth, and the boatmen's songs echo across the water. Above, the sun climbs higher, illuminating every stone, every leaf, every face turned toward its light. The day has begun, not with noise or haste, but with a gentle unfolding, a quiet acknowledgement of life's simple, enduring rhythm. And so, with Ra's light now guiding their steps, the family leaves the sanctuary of their home, moving forward into the slow, predictable dance of another day in ancient Egypt, a day that begins always with the first light of the sun over the Nile. The house has no doors, only a low, open archway, through which the golden morning light spills softly, pooling across the packed earth floor in patches of warmth. Inside, the air remains cool for now, wrapped in the lingering freshness of dawn. A small courtyard enclosed by mud brick walls serves as the heart of the home, open to the sky, shaded in parts by a woven reed awning that filters the sunlight to thin, glowing strands. This is where the morning meal will be prepared. Not hurried, but with the same slow, practiced rhythm that has filled countless Egyptian mornings before. The woman moves with quiet efficiency. Her bare feet whisper against the earth as she crosses to the stone quern set low on the ground. Its surface worn smooth by the passage of years, by the countless cycles of hands grinding grain into life. She kneels, settling into the familiar curve of her own body, and reaches for the small basket of emmer wheat, the ancient grain that forms the foundation of their meals, humble and yet sacred in its constancy. The grains rustle softly as she scoops them, spreading a handful across the lower stone. With both hands, she grips the upper stone, a smooth, oval-shaped weight, and begins to grind. The sound is soft but insistent, a rhythmic scrape and hush, like a quiet song remembered in muscle and bone. As the grains are pressed and crushed, their sharp edges break down, releasing a faint, nutty scent that mingles with the earth and the morning air. Flour gathers in a fine dust, settling into a small pile that will become the day's bread. There's no need for conversation now. The work itself is the language, a dialogue between hands and stone, between grain and breath. Nearby, the child watches, sitting cross-legged on the cool floor. His fingers play idly with a small reed toy, twisting its fragile stem into shapes. But his eyes are drawn again and again to the simple, mesmerizing motion of his mother's work. The grinding stone has always been there, always singing its soft, gritty song as the sun climbs higher each day. It is a sound that speaks of comfort, of nourishment, of life carrying on as it always has. When the flour is ready, the woman brushes it into a shallow clay bowl, her fingers careful, leaving nothing to waste. She pours a little water into another vessel, mixing in a small pinch of natron, the natural salt that seasons their food and purifies their offerings. In a larger bowl, she combines the flour with the salted water, kneading the mixture with steady, deliberate movements. The dough is coarse beneath her palms, sticky and resistant at first, but slowly it yields, becoming pliant, alive with the warmth of her hands. She shapes it into small round loaves, each one pressed gently into a pattern with her fingertips, a quiet signature, not meant for beauty, but for belonging. The small hearth in the courtyard is already prepared. The woman's husband had risen earlier, before the sky lightened, to gather dry twigs and bits of dung for fuel, stacking them carefully beside the clay baking dome. Now the embers glow softly, their heat steady but not harsh. The woman lifts a heavy, flat baking stone and places it over the fire, brushing it lightly with a palm leaf to clear away any lingering ash. One by one, she lays the dough upon it, the loaves sizzling faintly as they meet the stone's warmth. The scent of baking bread begins to fill the air, rich and earthy, curling through the courtyard like an invitation. It is a scent that stirs the belly, but also the heart, a reminder of home, of family, of the small but profound satisfaction that comes from creating nourishment with one's own hands. The bread is not leavened, not puffed or airy, but dense and hearty, meant to sustain through long hours of work beneath the sun. Beside the hearth, a tall jar of beer rests, its surface cool and slightly damp from the morning air. The beer is not like the ones known in modern times. It is thick, almost like a porridge, brewed from the same emmer grain, mixed with water, dates, and a wild yeast that gives it a mild, tangy flavor. This beer is not a luxury, but a staple, a liquid bread that nourishes as it quenches thirst. It is brewed in small batches, often by the women of the household, using simple clay vats that sit beneath the open sky. The brewing is done quietly, in rhythm with other tasks, as natural a part of life as drawing water or grinding grain. The woman lifts a ladle, carved from tamarisk wood, and stirs the beer gently, checking its consistency. A thin layer of foam clings to the surface, a sign that the fermentation has gone well. She dips a small cup into the jar, filling it with the cloudy, golden liquid and sets it aside for the morning meal. The child, sensing the moment, rises and fetches a handful of dates from the basket near the doorway. The dates are soft and sticky, their skins wrinkled, their flesh dark and sweet. They are a gift from the trees that line the river, a small sweetness to balance the earthiness of bread and beer dot as the loaves finish baking. Their undersides marked with a delicate char from the stone. The woman gathers them into a linen cloth, wrapping them loosely to keep their warmth. She sets the small meal, bread, beer, and dates upon a low wooden table in the center of the courtyard, a simple spread yet complete. There are no grand platters, no utensils. The meal is shared by hand, by gesture, by the quiet presence of family. Her husband returned from the river's edge, where he had paused to greet a neighbor, his hands damp from washing. He settles onto a mat woven from palm fronds, crossing, his legs beneath him, his movements unhurried, as though the very act of sitting to share a meal is a form of reverence. The child climbs onto his lap, nestling comfortably as the family bows their heads for a brief, whispered prayer. Not a formal ritual, but a small moment of gratitude, acknowledging the gods, the river, the earth, and the labor that brought this simple bounty to their table. The bread is torn by hand, its crust crisp, its interior dense but soft, still carrying the warmth of the hearth. Each bite is slow, deliberate, the flavors familiar, comforting. The beer is sipped from clay cups, its texture thick, its taste both sweet and sour, a reminder of the grain from which it was born. The dates, soft and yielding, offer bursts of honeyed richness that linger on the tongue. There is no rush, no conversation to distract from the meal. The silence is not empty, but full of the quiet satisfaction that comes from being present, from partaking in a ritual as old as the Nile itself. Around them, the village has awakened fully now. The air is filled with the murmur of voices, the distant clatter of wooden wheels, the bleating of goats being led to pasture. Yet here, within the mud brick walls of their small home, the family remains cocooned in a moment of stillness, savoring the meal that will carry them through the hours of work ahead. The child laughs softly as his father offers him a piece of bread dipped in beer, the simple act eliciting a smile that spreads like sunlight across his face. When the meal is finished, there are no grand declarations of satisfaction, no elaborate ceremonies of clearing away. The remnants are gathered with quiet hands, crumbs brushed gently from mats, cups rinsed with a splash of water, the hearth left to smolder softly. The family rises, stretching limbs that are warmed not just by food, but by the piece of shared ritual. The man takes up his staff, ready to step into the rhythm of the day. The woman gathers the basket of dates, a small reserve for later, while the child trails behind. Carrying a small pot of water with both hands, his steps careful, measured, learning through mimicry the slow, deliberate pace of life. The courtyard empties, but it does not feel abandoned. The scent of bread lingers in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of brewing beer and the ever-present perfume of earth and stone. These walls have witnessed countless meals like this one, and will witness countless more, each one a quiet thread in the vast unending tapestry of life along the Nile and cell, nourished by bread, by beer, by dates. And by the simple grace of a morning meal, the family steps beyond their home, into the light of a new day, a day that will ask much of their bodies, but for which their hearts are already prepared. The sun now rests just above the line of date palms, its light no longer a soft glow, but a golden warmth that spills across the village in wide, gentle sweeps. Shadows stretch long against the mud brick walls, and the air, though still cool, carries the first promise of the day's growing. Eat. The time has come for the people of the village to step out from their homes and into the pulse of daily labor. It is not a rushed exodus, but a slow and steady trickle, a familiar procession that repeats itself with the same patience as the river's flow dot in the narrow alleys between the houses. Footsteps begin to shuffle, soft and unhurried. The ground, is smooth beneath bare feet, the packed earth cool from the night's breath, though already beginning to warm where the sun's fingers reach. Men with staffs in hand, their linen kilts gathered at the waist, walk side by side. Their conversations murmured, not urgent, but as a way to pass the moments between here and the fields. Women, balancing baskets upon their heads, move with practiced ease, their backs straight, their pace graceful, as if the baskets were weightless. Children weave among them, some carrying small pots or bundles, some simply trailing after their parents, learning the path of the day by walking it. The village is awake, but it is not loud. It hums like a hive at peace, where every movement is part of a shared rhythm. The lowing of oxen rises softly from a pen at the village edge, blending with the creak of wooden carts as they are rolled out from shaded courtyards. Vendors call to one another, not with sharp cries, but with knowing nods and simple greetings, their voices no more intrusive than the cooing of doves overhead. A man selling reed sandals leans against his stall, lazily waving away the morning. Flies, his wares laid out neatly on a mat that rustles softly in the breeze. Our family joins the stream of movement, stepping out from the cool shadows of their home into the open air. The father carries a hoe slung over his shoulder, its wooden handle smoothed by years of use, the bronze blade dulled by countless mornings. Just like this one. His gait is steady, measured, as though his feet remember every rise and dip before his eyes need to. The mother, balancing a small basket of dates and flatbreads wrapped in linen, follows closely, her steps light, but purposeful. The child, too small yet for the long day's work, walks between them, his small hand occasionally brushing against his mother's skirt as they move forward together. The road to the fields curves gently away from the village, leading towards the shimmer of the irrigation canals that glint in the morning light. Along this path, the hum of life thickens. Neighbors exchange quiet words. Carts laden with baskets of tools and fresh-cut papyrus creak softly as they are pulled by docile donkeys. There are no hurried strides, no frantic gestures. The pace is what it has always been, unchanging, measured by the turning of the sun and the pull of the earth beneath their feet. Not all turn toward the fields. Some peel away towards workshops, their hands already twitching with the anticipation of craft. The weavers, with bundles of flax slung over their backs, make their way to shaded courtyards where looms stand like silent sentinels, waiting for the day's first threads. Potters head towards their kilns, the clay of yesterday shaping now dry and ready for firing. Stonecutters and carpenters, their tools slung across their shoulders, exchange quiet nods, their minds already filled. With the lines and forms of their work, each path is distinct, yet all flow from the same source, like tributaries branching from the Nile. Different tasks, yet the same steady rhythm. Further ahead, the narrow lanes widen into an open space that serves as the village market. Not yet at its peak, but alive with the gentle bustle of early trade. Stalls made from woven reeds and wooden poles are being arranged with goods. Baskets of lentils, jars of honey, bolts of linen neatly folded. Copper weights clink softly as they are arranged beside scales, their dull sheen catching the sunlight. A fisherman, his hands still damp from the morning catch, lays out his fish upon a bed of cool, wet reeds, the silver scales shimmering like coins. The air is filled with the faint sweetness of dates, the earthy scent of fresh-cut papyrus, and the distant trace of incense drifting from a nearby shrine. Vendors do not shout their prices. They wait, seated upon low stools, their goods displayed with quiet pride. Their eyes meeting the gazes of passers-by with a simple tilt of the chin, and an invitation to pause, to inspect, to engage in the familiar dance of barter. Purchases are not made in haste. They unfold slowly, in gestures and soft-spoken words. A negotiation that feels less like a transaction and more like a shared understanding. An agreement that respects the time and labor behind each crafted item or harvested. Good dot as the family walks through this soft buzz of commerce. The father pauses briefly to greet a fellow farmer, their conversation a brief exchange of hands raised in blessing, of eyes squinting against the sun as they speak of canals, of soil, of the season's hopes. The mother glances over baskets of onions and garlic, noting what will be needed later for the evening's meal, though she does not buy yet. There is no need to carry more than necessary. The rhythm of the market will still be here when the afternoon shadows grow long. Soon, the road narrows again, leading away from the marketplace, curving towards the fields. The village begins to thin, the sounds of trade fading into the distance, replaced by the soft rustle of reeds and a distant, ever-present murmur of water. The fields spread out in long green ribbons, their borders defined by narrow canals that glitter like threads of silver beneath the sun. Workers are already at their tasks, some guiding water into furrowed rows, their feet sinking gently into the cool mud, others bending low to tend to rows of flax and barley. The rhythm of their movements is slow, repetitive, as if in quiet conversation with the earth itself. The child, not yet of working age, is led to the shade of a nearby date palm, where other children gather, their games quiet, their laughter muted beneath the vastness of the open sky. From here they will watch, they will learn, absorbing the day's lessons not through words, but through the steady, unchanging cadence of daily labor. For those whose path did not lead to the fields, the workshops within the village now hum, softly with their own rituals. In the weaver's courtyard, the looms creak as threads are pulled taut, the weft and warp crossing in a gentle rhythm that mimics the pulse of the day. In the potter's yard, clay is spun slowly on a foot-driven wheel, shaped by hands that know without seeing how much pressure is needed, how much water to add. Stonecutters, beneath the shade of awnings, chip away at limestone blocks, their chisels tapping out a slow, deliberate music that echoes faintly in the still air. Each task is its own quiet universe, yet all are bound together by the shared simplicity. Of purpose to make, to tend, to provide, there is no rush to completion, no hunger for novelty. The satisfaction lies not in the end product, but in the act itself, in the feel of the loom's threads beneath one's fingers, in the cool resistance of clay taking shape, in the soft rhythm of feet pressing seeds into the damp soil. Time, in these hours, feels less like a river and more like a pool, deep, still, yet filled with unseen currents. The sun will rise higher, the tasks will continue, and the day will unfold not with dramatic flourishes, but with the soothing repetition of familiar labors. The fields, the workshops, the market, each is a note in the quiet symphony of an Egyptian morning, a song that has been sung for centuries and will continue long after these hands are stilled, dot as the sun climbs higher. The village breathes in unison with its people. Work continues, slow and deliberate, with no need for clocks or bells. The rhythm is felt in the body, in the lengthening of shadows, in the deepening warmth of the air. There's no need to mark the hours. The earth and sky will tell them. When it is time to pause, when it is time to return, dot, and so, beneath the steady gaze of the sun, life moves forward, not in hurried strides, but in the soft, persistent shuffle of feet upon earth. In the quiet hum of tasks repeated, in the small, wordless exchanges between those who know that life is not measured in moments of excitement, but in the peace of doing what must be done again and again. The morning deepens, and with it, the air begins to soften, no longer bearing the cool breath of dawn, but gently warmed, as if the earth itself is exhaling. Along the edges of the village, the fields stretch out, broad and patient beneath the wide sky, their green seams stitched neatly between narrow ribbons of water. These canals, dug by hand, are the lifelines of the land, slender, glimmering, threads that shimmer with the light of Ra, bringing the Nile's blessing to every furrow, every root, every seedling nestled in the soil. It is to these waters that the farmer now turns his steps. His pace is steady and familiar as the path he treads. The earth beneath his feet is soft but firm, a mixture of silt and clay left behind by the river's flood. Each step presses gently into the ground, leaving a shallow print that will soon be filled with water. The sandals, simple and worn, are soon set aside, left upon a flat stone at the edge of the field. The rest of the morning's work is done barefoot, a quiet conversation between skin and soil, between man and earth, uninterrupted by the barrier of leather dot around him. Other farmers move through the fields in the same unhurried rhythm. Some carry long poles, their ends shaped into simple, curved blades for guiding the water's path. Others bear woven baskets of young plants, ready to be set into the waiting earth. There's no barking of orders, no hurried movements. Each knows their task. Each finds their place. The day's work is a cycle, a flow as natural as the river's own. There is no need to rush what time has already prepared dot at the canal's edge. The farmer kneels, his hands dipping into the cool, moving water. The surface is smooth, yet beneath it, tiny eddies curl and twist around his fingers. The water is clear, alive with the faint shimmer of silk suspended within. With practiced ease, he lifts a smooth wooden shaduf, a simple lever balanced on a sturdy post, with a heavy stone counterweight on one end and a bucket on the other. This ancient tool, unchanged through countless generations, creaks softly. As it dips into the canal, the bucket filling with a satisfying splash. With a firm but patient pull, the farmer swings the bucket up and over, guiding its contents into a narrow furrow that waits. Thirsty and expectant, the water trickles forward, winding through the channels like a silver snake slipping between. Rows of green shoots disappearing momentarily beneath the foliage only to reappear further along, glistening under the sun's growing warmth. The farmer watches, not with urgency, but with a quiet attentiveness, adjusting the small earthen ridges that direct the flow, ensuring no row is left dry, no plant neglected. This task is not laborious. It is meditative. Each movement is slow, deliberate, as though in conversation with the land itself. The air is filled with soft sounds, the whisper of water meeting earth, the faint rustle of papyrus growing in thick clumps along the canals, the hum of insects flitting lazily from leaf to leaf. Occasionally a bird dips down, its wings brushing the water's surface, sending ripples outward in delicate rings. In the distance, the low, melodic murmur of other farmers' voices blends with the soft creak of wooden shadufs, creating a gentle chorus that seems to rise and fall in harmony with the rhythm of the fields. The soil beneath the farmer's feet is cool and yielding, its texture familiar, its scent rich and loamy. With a short, wide hoe, he begins to loosen the earth around the young plants, his hands moving in slow, practiced arcs. The bronze blade of the tool, though dulled from years of use, slices through the soil with ease, lifting small clumps that crumble softly back into place. It is a patient task, not a race to cover ground, but a quiet tending, an offering of time and care to the life growing in these rows. Further along, a neighbor works with his oxen, guiding the sturdy animals through a shallow channel, their hooves sending up small splashes as they pull a wooden plow through the moist earth. The plow's blade turns the soil, leaving behind a fresh, dark furrow that gleams whitely in the morning sun. The oxen move slowly, their broad shoulders swaying with each step, their breaths rising in soft puffs. The man speaks to them in a low, steady tone, his words not commands, but reassurances, as though reminding them and himself that this is their shared task. Their shared rhythm dot as the morning progresses. The fields become a mosaic of motion and stillness. Some farmers pause to stand quietly, their backs straight, their eyes scanning the sky. The sun, the water's flow, reading the language of the land. Others kneel, their hands busy weaving small barriers of reeds to guide the water's course, their fingers moving with the deftness of habit. Children, too small yet for the larger tasks, gather loose stalks of papyrus. Their laughter soft and fleeting, like birdsong. The heat, though still gentle, begins to settle more firmly upon the shoulders and backs of the workers. Yet there is no complaint, no thought of shade just yet. The work continues, not with haste, but with a kind of respectful persistence. The farmer wipes his brow with the back of his hand, his skin darkened and smoothed by countless days like this one. His breath is steady, his movements unbroken. He is not working against the day, but within it, each motion a part of a larger, timeless pattern. Occasionally he pauses to stretch, his eyes lifting to the distant line of palms swaying softly. Against the sky, the horizon is wide and open, the blue above deepening as the sun climbs. There is a peace in this openness and the lack of walls, of boundaries. The land stretches out before him, not as something to conquer, but as a partner, patient, generous, yet requiring care, along the canal's edge. The papyrus rustles with a soft, sighing sound, the long, slender stalks bending and whispering. Secrets known only to the breeze. The water continues its slow, inevitable journey, slipping into every crack, every crease, nourishing the earth in quiet persistence. The farmer follows this flow, moving alongside it, adjusting, tending, guiding. His feet sinking gently into the mud, his hands stained with the dark richness of the soil. The morning wears on, but time feels elastic here, stretching thin beneath. The sun, unmeasured except by the lengthening of shadows, the warming of air. The farmer's thoughts are not of hours or minutes, but of rows to tend, water to guide, soil to ease into readiness. Each task completed is folded into the next, like threads in a loom, creating a fabric of labor that is simple, repetitive, and deeply grounding. There's no need for conversation beyond the occasional nod or brief exchange of words with a passing neighbor. The language of the fields is spoken in gestures, a glance toward a rising water level, a hand pressed gently. To the earth to feel its moisture, a quiet motion indicating a shared understanding. It is a language older than words, one that connects each person here not only to one another, but to the generations who have worked these fields before. And to those who will follow Dot as the sun reaches its highest point, the light becomes more direct, its heat a firm, steady presence pressing down upon the land. It is then that the farmer begins to ease his pace, his movements slowing, his steps turning back toward the edge of the field. The water, now guided into its proper courses, will continue its work without further coaxing. The plants, their roots freshly bathed, will grow in their own time. The morning's labors are complete not in a grand flourish, but in a quiet, assured conclusion. With a soft brush of his hands against his kilt, the farmer collects his tools, the bronze blade of the hoe catching a glint of sun as it is lifted. His feet are washed briefly in the canal, the cool water rinsing away the soil but leaving behind the faint, familiar scent of earth and river. The sandals are retrieved from their resting place, slipped back onto feet that know them as well as they know the path home. He does not hurry. The path back is as gentle as the one that brought him here, winding slowly through the fields where others still work, their figures bent and steady in the distance. The sun is bright now, the air thick with warmth, yet there is no discomfort. Only the satisfaction of tasks completed, of a morning spent in rhythm with the land's quiet demands. And as he walks, the farmer knows that the day is far from over. There will be more work, more tending, more small, necessary rituals as the afternoon stretches ahead. But for now, there is a pause, a simple, welcome space in which to rest, to share a meal in the shade, to breathe in the peace of a life, lived in step with earth, water, and sky. The morning is beginning to lean toward midday. And while the farmers in the fields ease into a slower pace beneath the rising sun, another rhythm of life hums quietly within the heart of the village. It is here, beyond the dusty paths and simple reed-fenced courtyards, that the artisans gather in shaded workshops. Their days marked not by the shifting tides of the Nile, but by the steady beat of human hands crafting form from earth, fiber, and stone. As the air grows warmer, the walls of these workshops remain cool. Their mud brick surface is thick and enduring, keeping the sun at bay. Within these spaces, life settles into a different kind of flow. Not the outward expanse of fields, but the inward focus of creation. Slow and deliberate dot in one such courtyard. Sunlight filters through a lattice of woven palm fronds overhead, casting a soft dappled pattern onto the earthen floor below. The air carries the faint scent of wet clay and powdered stone, mingled with the dry, grassy aroma of flax fibers hanging in bundles along the walls. The artisan, his hands already dusted with the fine, pale residue of limestone, moves with a quiet familiarity, preparing his tools for the day's work. His fingers brush gently over the surface of a wooden chisel, worn smooth from years of use, before lifting a small, rounded mallet that fits perfectly in his palm. These tools are not merely instruments. They are companions, their weight and texture known as intimately as the path from home to workshop. Beside him, a young apprentice prepares a new block of stone, its surface still rough from the quarry, its edges uneven. With care, the apprentice splashes water onto the block, the droplets running in thin rivulets, darkening the pale surface and releasing a faint mineral scent into the air. The artisan watches, not with scrutiny, but with a patient gaze, offering a nod as the apprentice begins to mark simple guidelines with a piece of red ochre. The strokes faint but precise. There's no urgency here, no rush to complete. The work will take as long as it must. Stone does not bend a haste dot further across the courtyard. The rhythm of another craft hums softly. A weaver sits before an upright loom, her hands moving in a gentle, practiced cadence as she threads the shuttle back and forth, the linen threads gradually weaving into a narrow strip of cloth. The fibers whisper against each other, a soft, almost imperceptible sound, as the weave grows row upon row, forming the beginning of a tunic that may one day be worn by a scribe. Or perhaps a child preparing for a festival. The weaver's face is calm, her eyes half-lidded, her focus internal. The task is repetitive, but not dull. Each movement brings with it a subtle sense of satisfaction, a rhythm of fingers, shuttle, and breath that soothes even as it builds dot in a shaded corner. A potter kneels before a low, spinning wheel, coaxing a mound of clay into the shape of a small rounded jar. His hands are strong, but his touch is light, guiding the clay upwards in smooth, even spirals. The wheel turns slowly, its motion kept steady by a simple foot treadle, a soft creak with each press of his foot. The clay, wet and cool, responds to his touch, as if remembering the countless vessels shaped by hands like his through the passage of centuries. Around him, rows of freshly thrown pots sit in neat lines, their surfaces glistening softly as they begin the slow process of drying beneath the filtered sunlight. The workshop is not silent, but its sounds are soft, layered, and harmonious. The gentle tap-tap of mallet against chisel as stone yields in thin, patient layers. The swish of woven fibers as the loom gathers each thread into place. The low, soothing murmur of artisans exchanging quiet words, advice, observations, or perhaps simply sharing the small details of their lives. No voice rises above the other. There's no clamor, no sharp command. Instead, the workshop breathes as a single communal body, each artisan attuned to the gentle pulse of creation. Occasionally, a breeze drifts through the open archways, stirring the hanging bundles of flax, lifting a faint cloud of dust from the earthen floor. The air is warm, but within these walls, the heat feels softened, filtered through layers of stone and reed. The light shifts slowly, the patterns on the ground moving with the sun, marking time not with urgency, but with a languid grace. At a workbench near the back of the courtyard, another craftsperson leans over a piece of carved wood, his fingers deftly inlaying thin slivers of colored faience into its surface. The colors, turquoise, deep blue, and a soft, earthy red, catch the light as they are pressed gently into place, forming a pattern of lotus flowers and papyrus stalks. Each piece is tiny, barely the width of a fingernail, yet no detail is hurried, no placement imprecise. The craftsman's breath moves in sync with his hands, steady and quiet, as if the act of inlaying each fragment is a form of prayer dot above. The faint calls of birds drift through the open roof, mingling with the soft rustle of palm fronds. Beyond, the wall's life continues. Farmers guide oxen through furrows. Vendors arrange baskets of onions and lentils in a market. Scribes pause beneath colonnades to stretch their fingers, but here, Within the workshop, time feels suspended. There's no pressing need to mark its passage. The work is the clock, and its hands move with the patient ticking of stone against stone, thread against loom, clay against palm. The potter lifts a newly formed jar from the wheel, its surface still. Damp, its shape perfect in its simplicity. With care, he places it beside its waiting kin. Its future journey already imagined, perhaps to hold beer in a humble kitchen or oil in a temple storeroom. Every object here, though modest in form, will find its place in the quiet fabric of life. The artisans do not speak of legacy or permanence, yet their work carries with it a quiet assurance. These vessels, these textiles, these carved figures will outlast the day, perhaps even outlast their maker's dot in the weaving corner. A second loom is being prepared. A young girl, perhaps no more than 12, sits beside the older weaver, watching intently as the warp threads are aligned, their tension adjusted with small wooden weights. The older woman's hands move with fluid ease, yet she pauses often, explaining, showing, allowing the girl's smaller fingers to mirror the motions. This passing of knowledge is as natural as breathing, a gentle continuation of skills handed down from mother to daughter, from generation to generation, as quietly and surely as the Nile's own flow. Stone shavings gather in small, neat piles. Beneath the sculptor's workbench, their scent sharp, clean, and faintly metallic. The artisan leans close to his current piece, a simple offering table. Its surface adorned with shallow relief carvings of bread, beer, and lotus blossoms. His chisel, guided by the memory of countless similar pieces, removes a whisper-thin layer of stone with each tap. There is no rush to complete. The offerings depicted will serve their purpose for years to come, placed within a tomb, or perhaps upon a household shrine. The artisan works not for grandeur, but for necessity, for the quiet satisfaction of craft fulfilling its role in the steady cycle of life and death dot as the sun climbs higher. The workshop grows brighter, its shadows retreating, the light upon, the earthen floor softening into a warm golden glow. The artisans pause now and then, sipping cool water from simple clay cups, wiping their hands on linen cloths that carry the marks of their trade, dust, fiber, and pigment. There is no sense of exhaustion, only the quiet contentment of bodies and minds moving in harmony with their tasks. Outside, the murmur of the village market begins to drift in, a soft swell of voices bartering over dates, onions, and small, handcrafted goods. Some of these goods were shaped here, within these very walls, their journey from raw material to daily object now complete. But within the workshop, attention remains focused on the work at hand, the repetition of familiar movements, creating a cocoon of calm, where time slows and each moment feels as though it might linger forever. The artisan lifts his chisel once more. The weaver aligns a fresh spool of linen thread. The potter gathers another lump of clay. There's no grand event, no sudden change, only the continued hum of quiet human creation. A rhythm as old as Egypt itself, as soothing and unchanging as the river that feeds the land beyond these walls. And so the hours pass gently without fanfare. The workshop breathes, works, and waits, a sanctuary of soft labor beneath the Egyptian sun, while the artisans shape clay and chisel stone, and the farmers tend to their furrows along the irrigation canals. Another kind of labor is unfolding. Within the shaded colonnades of the village scribe's hall, here, beneath the silent watch of towering limestone pillars and the faint flicker of oil lamps, the tools of work are not plows or looms, but delicate reed pens, slips of papyrus, and the fine dusts of black and red ink. The rhythm is quieter. Here, even more hushed than the steady cadence of hammer against stone. It is the rhythm of thought of lines drawn in patient, silent rows, each symbol a whisper of meaning captured by a scribe's hand. The scribe sits cross-legged upon a simple reed mat, his body settled into a posture of stillness that will endure for hours. Before him, a small wooden writing board rests upon his knees, its surface polished smooth by years of use. Upon it lies a fresh sheet of papyrus, its texture crisp, its pale color catching the soft morning light filtering through the narrow windows above. The scribe's fingers are slender, precise, moving with careful intention as he lifts a small palette of pigments, black from soot and charcoal, red from ochre and earth, each mixed with water and thickened to a smooth paste. Nearby, a jar of fresh water sits within reach, its surface rippling gently as it is disturbed, now and then, by the scribe's delicate rinsing of his brush. The air here is cool, still, and scented faintly with the bitter aroma of ink and the subtle sweetness of dried papyrus. The village beyond these walls hums with its usual life. The muffled shouts of vendors at the market, the distant creak of a wooden cart, the soft bleating of goats. But within this hall, time seems to stretch and slow. The outside world, held at bay by the sanctity of the written word, dot with a gentle breath, the scribe dips his reed pen into the black ink, its tip absorbing just enough to begin, and brings it to the papyrus in a single, fluid motion. The first strokes are simple, a few horizontal lines, carefully measured to guide the columns of hieroglyphs that will follow. These are not grand inscriptions destined for temple walls or monumental tombs. No, these are the humble records of daily life, an inventory of grain stores, a tally of cattle, perhaps a tax ledger to be presented at the local granary. Yet, in their quiet way, they are no less sacred. Every loaf of bread, every basket of onions, every measured jar of beer is a thread in the vast, intricate weave of Egypt's enduring life. The symbols begin to emerge, each one drawn with a patience that feels timeless. The scribe's hand moves slowly, carefully, forming the familiar shapes of birds, reeds, waterlines, and coilbs. Each sign, though small, holds a weight of meaning, a subtle precision that requires not only skill, but attentiveness. The act of writing is not a task to be hurried. It is a meditation, a quiet conversation between hand, ink, and thought. The scribe's breathing slows, aligning with the measured strokes of his pen, the scratch of reed against papyrus barely louder than a whisper. Occasionally, the scribe will pause, lifting his head to let his gaze rest upon the open courtyard. Beyond the pillars, there, a gentle breeze stirs the fronds of a date palm, casting shifting patterns of shadow upon the stone floor. A small bird flits down to the edge of a water basin, dipping its beak and sending ripples across the still surface. These moments of pause are not interruptions. They are a natural part of the scribe's rhythm. Just as a farmer rests his back beneath the shade of a sycamore, or a potter pauses between vessels, so too does the scribe allow his mind to float, gently between lines, finding a steady, even pulse in the space between work dot further along the colonnade. A senior scribe murmurs quietly to an apprentice, his voice low and even, the words floating softly amidst the sunlit dust motes. They are reviewing a document, perhaps a record of temple offerings, or a list of names and titles. The apprentice listens intently, his own writing board balanced carefully upon his lap, his fingers fidgeting with the edge of a papyrus sheet. There's no rush in the elder's instruction. The knowledge of reading and writing is passed slowly, patiently, through repetition and calm observation. The apprentice will spend years copying the same lines, the same prayers, the same inventories, until the symbols flow as naturally from his hand as breath from his lips. In a corner alcove beneath a small oil lamp, a stack of completed documents is neatly arranged, each tied with thin strips of papyrus cord. These are not grand works of literature or ornate royal decrees. They are records of land boundaries, of seed allotments, of village transactions so ordinary, so quietly essential, that their importance lies not in splendor, but in their faithful, meticulous preservation. To the scribe, there's a humble dignity in this duty, to record, to remember, to keep order within the ebb and flow of daily life. The ink palette is rinsed, the water swirling into soft clouds of gray as the scribe prepares his pen once more. The next section of the ledger requires red ink, reserved for headings, for names, for emphasis within the text. The scribe's hand adjusts, his strokes becoming slightly more deliberate as he inscribes the name of a village elder. Each symbol, crafted with a reverence that acknowledges both duty and tradition. The hall remains wrapped in its own quiet music, the soft scratch of pen on papyrus. The occasional murmured question, the gentle clink of clay jars as water is poured or ink is refreshed. No loud voice disturbs this sanctuary. Even the movement of the scribes is careful, measured, as if any sudden gesture might break the spell of focus that fills the air. Here, knowledge is not a pursuit of urgency, but a craft shaped by the same slow patience as a pot on a wheel or a wall carved in stone. Outside, the shadows grow shorter as the sun nears its peak. The stone pillars of the colonnade are now edged, with bright, slanting beams of light, their surfaces warming to a soft, golden glow. The air shifts subtly, a faint hint of the day's heat pressing in, yet the scribe's work continues undisturbed. The thickness of the temple walls, the cool breath of shaded passageways, holds the worst of the midday sun at bay, allowing the scribes to continue their quiet labor in the embrace of stone and shadow. Near the hall's entrance, a small offering table sits beneath a niche carved into the wall. Upon it rests a simple dish of dried dates, a tiny clay bowl of water, and a few grains of incense left from the morning's prayers. The smoke has long since faded, but the faint, sweet scent lingers, mingling with the more earthly aromas of ink and parchment. It is a subtle reminder that even within the practical record-keeping tasks of the scribes, the divine is never far away. Every inventory, every measured boundary, every name written in red ink is a thread connecting the scene. And the unseen, the practical, and the sacred, the scribe shifts slightly, easing the stiffness from his legs, and continues his work. The ledger is nearly complete now, a long, unbroken column of symbols that tell the story of the village's humble daily exchanges. There is a quiet satisfaction in this, in the act of capturing life's small movements in ink and fiber. The world beyond may change with the seasons, with the floods of the Nile, with the passage of dynasties, but within these pages, the simple truths of daily life endure as the morning begins its slow descent into midday. The scribes will soon pause for their rest, setting aside their pens and ledgers to share a quiet meal beneath the shaded courtyard. Yet, even in rest, their minds remain gently tuned to the rhythm of their craft, a rhythm not of drama or spectacle, but of the soft, enduring heartbeat of a civilization that finds its strength in the quiet repetition of life's ordinary. Moments dot in this way, the scribe's hall continues to breathe, a sanctuary of ink and thought, where time slows, and life's simplest details are given dignity of permanence as the sun begins its slow climb towards its highest point in the sky. The rhythm of the village softens. The earlier hours of activity fields bustling with farmers, workshops humming with the steady work of artisans, scribes hunched in focused silence, begin to ease into a quieter pace. It is a pause not enforced by command, but by the simple, shared understanding that the midday sun, in all its brilliant and unrelenting glory, commands a certain reverence. The heat descends gradually, seeping into walls of sun-baked mud brick, wrapping the earth in a heavy warmth that invites the village to retreat into shade and stillness for a while, in the narrow lanes between homes. Shadows stretch longer, clinging to the sides of mud brick walls. The open courtyards that, just hours ago, were alive with morning chores now hold a hushed, expectant quiet. Families retreat beneath the shade of overhanging reed roofs, or find comfort beneath the spreading arms of fig trees and sycamores, their broad leaves filtering the sunlight into soft, dappled patches. The air is filled with a subdued chorus. The dry hum of cicadas, the distant splash of water from a well, the low murmurs of neighbors exchanging a few soft words before settling into the gentle rhythm of rest. In one such courtyard, a family gathers quietly, moving with an unhurried grace as they prepare their midday meal. There is no need for elaborate preparation. The foods of this hour are simple, nourishing, and familiar. A flat, low table, little more than a smooth plank of wood, is set in the shade, its surface already dusted clean. A woven basket holds freshly baked flatbreads, their surfaces still warm, carrying the faint aroma of the morning's baking. Beside them rests a small clay bowl filled with lentils, cooked slowly over a fire until soft and creamy, their earthy scent mingling with the sweetness of chopped onions and a drizzle of pressed oil. Children, their feet bare and dusty from morning errands, shuffle quietly around the edges, carrying small cups of cool water drawn from the family's storage jars. The water is kept cool by the natural breathability of clay, seeping just enough moisture to keep its contents fresh against the creeping heat. The children move carefully, their small hands steadying the cups, their eyes bright beneath sleepy lids as they settle down on woven mats. Cross-legged, waiting for the meal to begin, nearby an elder, perhaps a grandmother or an aunt, sits. Peeling garlic cloves, her fingers moving with practiced ease, placing each into a small bowl. She hums softly, a tune that drifts through the stillness, blending with the ambient rustle of leaves and the occasional coo of a dove perched on the rooftop above. These moments are not filled with busy conversation. Rather, they are wrapped in a kind of peaceful quiet where the presence of family is enough, where words are unneeded and gestures are understood. The midday meal itself is not a feast, but it is satisfying. Bread is broken by hand, torn in two, small pieces to scoop up the lentils. Onions add a bright, sharp bite to each mouthful, while a small dish of pickled vegetables offers a tangy, briny counterpoint. Sometimes, if the week has been kind and the catch from the river generous, there may be a few small fish, salted and dried, adding their own rich flavor to the simple fare. But even without such luxuries, the meal is complete in its humble sufficiency. The act of eating is slow, unhurried. Each bite is savored, not in indulgence, but in a quiet, rhythmic satisfaction. Hands move with ease, passing bowls, refilling cups, brushing away stray crumbs that fall upon the reed mats. There is a comfort in this repetition, a familiar choreography performed countless times, day after day, generation after generation. In this shared meal, beneath the shade of sunlit courtyards, life finds a steady pulse, a momentary stillness. Amidst the larger flow of work and seasons, occasionally a breeze will stir, weaving through the open doorways, carrying with it the mingled scents of earth and water, of distant fields and the faint sweetness of date palms. It is a soft, ephemeral gift, a gentle breath that cools the skin, lifting damp strands of hair from the nape of a neck, stirring the edges of linen garments that flutter softly against the skin. The village seems to exhale with this breath, releasing a quiet sigh as if in recognition of nature's small mercy. Beyond the courtyard walls, the village settles into a midday hush. The sounds of work are distant now, softened to a far-off murmur. Farmers have laid aside their tools, finding shelter beneath makeshift canopies or resting upon bundles of papyrus along the canal banks. Artisans, their hands coated in dust and clay, recline in the shade of their workshops, their work tables temporarily abandoned, their bodies easing into restful postures. Even the animals seem to understand this sacred pause. Goats and cattle cluster beneath whatever shade they can find, tails flicking lazily, their movements slow and deliberate dot in the shade of the courtyard after the last crumbs have been swept. Aside and the final drops of water sipped, the family settles further into rest. Mats are unrolled, heads find pillows woven from soft reeds, and the body's weight is surrendered to the cool embrace of the depot. Conversations fade into whispers, then into silence, as eyelids grow heavy and breathing slows. It is not a deep sleep, not always, but a kind of waking rest, a floating on the edge of dreams where time loses urgency, where the sun's slow passage overhead is the only clock that matters. Within this pause, life continues in a different key. A young mother rocks an infant gently upon her lap, her hand tracing soft circles across the child's back, her gaze distant, serene. An elder leans against the wall, eyes half closed, softly, mouthing a prayer to the household gods for health, for protection, for the blessing of a gentle flood. A father, his back resting against a stack of woven baskets, runs his fingers through loose grains of barley, his thoughts drifting far beyond the courtyard, perhaps to memories of his own childhood, of afternoons spent in the same soft pause above. Then the sky is a brilliant, cloudless blue, a vast, open canvas against which birds trace slow arcs, their wings outstretched, gliding effortlessly upon unseen currents. The sunlight is relentless, yet it does not intrude upon the sanctuary of shade. It waits patiently beyond the walls, knowing that soon enough the village will stir again, will rise from its quiet to resume the day's labors, but for now, time feels suspended, caught in the gentle rhythm of breath and the subtle symphony of midday rest dot in some homes. This hour becomes a moment for small acts of quiet craft. A mother may take up her spindle, fingers deftly twisting flax into fine threads. Her movements slow and unhurried, the soft whir of the spindle blending with the rustle of palm leaves overhead. Children, too restless to sleep, may gather pebbles. And small sticks, creating simple games upon the packed earth, their giggles muffled, respectful of the quiet around them. Even these playful moments are subdued, folded into the fabric of the day's stillness dot as the sun begins its slow journey westward. Its fierce glow softens just enough to stir the village from its repose. There is no bell or call to signal the end of rest. Rather, the change is felt in the shifting angle of light, in the cooler touch of air upon skin, in the subtle reawakening of sound as neighbors stretch and rise, voices returning in low, easy tones. Mats are rolled away, cups and bowls are gathered, and the gentle preparations for the afternoon's tasks begin once more. But before the work resumes, there lingers a brief, lingering moment, a collective breath where the village exists in a state of perfect balance, suspended between the stillness of rest and the slow, inevitable return to motion. It is a moment that belongs to no one, yet is shared by all, a silent acknowledgement of life's simple, repeating cycles. And so, with bodies refreshed and spirits quieted, the village stirs gently into the second half of the day, ready to pick up the threads of labor, of ritual, of daily life. The midday pause, with all its softness and slowness, has done its quiet work. It has restored, reset, and prepared them for the steady rhythm that will carry them gently onward, toward the lowering sun, toward evening's hum, and eventually, toward the cool hush of night once more. The sun, once a blinding crown at the zenith of the sky, begins its slow, graceful descent toward the western horizon. Its light, though still warm and golden, softens by degrees, casting longer shadows along the dusty paths of the village. The world seems to exhale, releasing the tension held in the peak heat of midday. Slowly, life stirs from its quiet pause. Courtyards that had been silent now hum gently with movement. Families rise from their reed mats, stretch their limbs, and shake off the drowsiness that clings after the noonday rest. The afternoon return is not marked by urgency. There is no ringing bell or shouted command. Instead, the shift happens in soft, unspoken gestures. A mother gathering empty water jars. A father brushing stray crumbs from his tunic. Children beginning to wander back into the dusty lanes, their bare feet stirring small puffs of earth with every step. The village awakens slowly, reverently, as though not to disturb the rhythm of the day, which flows forward like the Nile itself, steady, predictable, and deeply soothing. For the farmers, the return to the fields is a continuation, not a beginning. Tools left leaning against canal walls are retrieved, their wooden handles warm from the sun's embrace. Water still flows through the narrow irrigation channels, glistening as it weaves between rows of young barley and flax. The afternoon light gives the crop a muted glow, a softened vibrancy. As farmers step carefully along the embankments, their feet familiar with the slick, cool sensation of mud beneath their soles. Tasks resume in silence, a hand smoothing. Out of furrow, another adjusting a woven sluice gate to guide the water's flow with patient, practiced movements. There is no rush, for the rhythm of the land will not be hurried. It receives care only in its own time, in its own quiet way. Along the earthen paths, artisans too begin to return to their workshops. In the shade of simple awnings, potters once. More press their palms into cool, pliant clay, their fingers remembering the slow turning of the wheel. Weavers settle before their looms, the soft clatter of wooden heddles echoing softly, as threads are pulled and passed with hypnotic regularity. The workshop hum is subdued, more muted than the busy mornings, yet just as purposeful. It is a time for finishing, for smoothing edges and perfecting details, for preparing the day's work to be set aside before the sun finally dips and the day's labor is offered back to the household gods. For scribes, the afternoon often brings the second round of ledgers and records, though their work slows into a more contemplative pace. Seated beneath the long shadows of colonnades, their reed pens glide softly across papyrus sheets, the scratch of ink on fiber blending into the ambient sounds of the village, a donkey's distant bray, the rhythmic splash of oars from a passing, boat on the Nile, the murmured exchanges of traders returning from market. The weight of the sun has eased, but it has not disappeared, and so the work of the scribes becomes a kind of moving meditation, a quiet continuation of what was started in the morning, carried gently into the fading hours of light. Amongst these labors, small gestures of reverence are interwoven, subtle but ever present. As Ra, the great sun god, makes his slow journey westward, every fold of life acknowledges his passage in small, ritual ways. A farmer, wiping the sweat from his brow, will pause momentarily to glance toward the sun, offering a silent nod of respect. An artisan, upon completing a vessel, will trace a quick, practiced sign of protection upon its surface, a mark so subtle it could easily be missed, yet deeply meaningful. Even children, in their simple games of rolling hoops and tossing pebbles, will pause as the golden light slants more steeply, drawn instinctively to the majesty of Ro's slow descent dot in the courtyards and shrines of homes. Women begin to prepare small offerings, a pinch of incense, a handful of barley, a few drops of beer poured into tiny clay bowls. These tokens are not grand, not ostentatious, but they are heartfelt. They are offerings to household spirits, to ancestors, to the unseen presences that guard the thresholds of mud brick walls and the hearts of families. The smoke from a lit incense cone spirals upward, catching the sunlight in delicate curls as soft prayers are murmured for protection, for health, for the safe return of loved ones who may be working farther afield. The air, though still heavy, with warmth begins to shift. A breeze stirs from the direction of the river, cool and gentle, threading through the palm fronds and stirring the light linen garments of those who labor. It carries with it the mingled scent of water, earth, and distant cooking fires, a soft reminder that the day's labor is slowly approaching its natural close. Yet, there is still work to be done. Fields need their final tending. Pottery must be set aside to dry. Ledgers must be tallied, signed, and tied with slender reeds. But the pace is softer now, unhurried. It is not the frantic rush of tasks incomplete, but a graceful winding down, like the low, repetitive notes of a lullaby. The sun, now leaning toward the western mountains, casts the village in a honeyed light, every surface touched by a golden glow. The walls of mud brick homes, the dark, smooth trunks of date palms, the flowing water of the canals, all seem to shimmer briefly, as if the world itself is exhaling in satisfaction. The heat that once pressed down now lifts, replaced by a comforting warmth that wraps gently around those still at work. Even voices, which had been muted during the harshness of midday, rise again in soft exchanges. Neighbors greet one another in passing. Artisans share a quiet joke over their tools. Farmers, balancing bundles of freshly cut papyrus, trade small stories as they walk the path homeward. And as the afternoon deepens, rituals continue not in grand ceremonies, but in the repetition of ordinary gestures filled with quiet meaning. A craftsman, having completed his final piece, will offer a small nod toward a household shrine, giving thanks for the skill in his hands. A scribe will gently blow upon a freshly inked page, drying the symbols that record the flow of grain and the names of the living. A mother will sweep the threshold of her home, brushing away not just dust, but the subtle traces of the day's labors, making way for the peacefulness of evening. These moments are woven into the fabric of life, as natural as breath. They are acts of reverence that do not disrupt the rhythm of the day, but flow within it, like the Nile weaving through the landscape. Ever present, ever constant, the lowering. Sun is not just a marker of time. It is a reminder of balance. For in ancient Egypt, life was a harmony between work and rest, between labor and ritual, between the seen and unseen worlds. As the sun approaches the horizon, casting long, soft shadows, the village collectively begins to ease into that balance. Once more, the day's tasks gently placed aside, not with abruptness, but with a soft, lingering touch, as if to say, there will be time again tomorrow. And so the afternoon winds slowly down, every gesture a small echo of the larger rhythm. The fields, now dappled with golden light, rest beneath the watchful eyes of their caretakers. Workshops grow quieter, their spaces swept, their tools set aside with care. The scribes roll their papyrus scrolls, tying them neatly, their hands moving with calm precision. And as the sun kisses the tops of distant palm trees, the village prepares for its next natural chapter. The slow, communal hum of evening dot, but for now, in these last lingering moments of afternoon, life continues to flow gently, softly, and quiet. Devotion to the ever-turning wheel of sun and shadow dot as the sun continues its slow descent. Inching ever closer to the western horizon, the village feels the pull of ritual. It is a time when work is gradually put aside, when the tools of farming, crafting, and recording are set down, not with urgency, but with a quiet, reverent pause. For in these golden hours, when the air cools and the light softens, attention turns to devotion. Not the grand ceremonies of kings and priests, but the small, everyday rituals that thread through the lives of ordinary people, offerings given with humble hands. Prayers whispered in the stillness as the sacred mingles, gently with the ordinary dot in the heart of the village, where narrow lanes converge, stands a small temple. Its walls, built from stone and mud brick, rise modestly compared to the grand monuments of distant cities. Yet here, within its simple confines, the divine feels no less present. Palm fronds flutter softly against its outer walls, and the faint aroma of old incense clings to its shaded entrance, mingling with the earthiness of dust and time. The temple is not only a place of worship, but a familiar presence, woven into the daily pulse of the community, a place where the weight of the day is gently released into the hands of the gods. The courtyard of the temple holds a quiet hush, as figures approach with measured steps. They come not in crowds, but in small clusters, families, neighbors, solitary elders, each carrying with them small tokens of offering. A basket of barley grains, a folded strip of linen, a tiny dish of beer brewed in the family courtyard. These are not offerings born of wealth or grandeur, but of gratitude and continuity, given in the same quiet way they have been offered for generations. The act of giving is itself the devotion dot as one steps through the threshold of the temple. The world seems to exhale. The air, cool and heavy with the scent of incense, wraps gently around the skin. Light filters in through narrow slits high on the walls, creating beams of golden dust that drift lazily in the still air. The sounds of the village beyond the distant murmur of conversation, the soft braying of donkeys, the rhythmic splash of oars on water fade into a muffled hum, replaced by a deeper, quieter rhythm. Here, within these walls, time slows further, folding into itself as worshippers move with deliberate, unhurried grace. A small shrine stands near the inner sanctum, its surface smooth with the touch of countless hands. Upon it rests a carved statue of a protective household deity, perhaps Bess, with his lion-like face and dwarf-like form, guardian of homes and families. Around him, tiny offerings accumulate, sprigs of papyrus, polished pebbles, a few copper beads arranged in a careful circle. A woman kneels before the shrine, her palms pressed together, eyes closed. Her lips move in a silent prayer, the words carried not on sound, but on breath and intention. She asked not for riches, but for health, for the safety of her children, for the continued kindness of the river's waters dot further within. A priest tends to the main altar. His linen robe is simple, its hem brushing softly against the smooth floor as he moves. His hands, steady and practiced, place small cones of incense upon a stone dish. The faint sizzle of resin needing heat, releasing tendrils of sweet smoke that spiral upwards. He chants not loudly, but in a low, even tone, his words are gentle. Murmur that blends with the breath of the temple itself. The prayer is as much for the gods as it is for the community. A reminder that each offering, no matter how small, contributes to the balance of life, to the sacred flow that binds the human and divine. Visitors move in and out of the temple with the same fluid grace. A young boy, his hands cradling a tiny clay figure of Toret, places it carefully beside a dish of dates, his face a mixture of concentration and shy reverence. An elder, stooped and slow of step, traces a protective symbol upon the wall with her fingertip, a gesture as natural as drawing breath. No one rushes. The temple is a space outside of haste, a place where even time seems to bow in quiet respect. The act of offering is simple, but it is not idle. Each gesture, each small token left behind, is a thread in the vast, unseen tapestry that holds the world in balance. The gods do not demand wealth, but they listen to intention. A handful of lentils placed beside a flickering oil lamp carries as much weight as a golden statue in a king's temple. Here, in this quiet village shrine, the divine is intimate, familiar, a presence that dwells not only in stone and symbol, but in the hearts of those who give with humble hands. Outside, the sky deepens into a richer shade of gold, the shadows of palm fronds stretching long and slender across the dusty ground. The breeze that stirs now carries a cooler touch, brushing gently through open doorways and rustling the reeds along the river's edge. The temple, bathed in this soft, honeyed light, feels like a cradle of stillness amidst the slowly shifting world. Worshippers linger in the courtyard, sharing quiet words, their voices low and unhurried, as if reluctant to leave the sanctuary's embrace too quickly dot in the small alcoves of the temple walls. Oil lamps are lit, their tiny flames flickering. In the gentle draft, sending soft halos of light dancing upon the stone. The scent of fresh oil mingles with the ever-present sweetness of incense. A perfume that clings not just to the air, but to the fabric of memory itself. These lamps are not lit merely to illuminate, but to honor small beacons offered to the setting sun, to guide Ra's celestial bark as it journeys across the underworld. Ensuring the sun's safe return at dawn. Among these quiet rituals, the day's labors find their reflection. A potter may offer a shard of fine clay, smoothed and polished as a token of the day's honest work. A scribe, his hands still faintly stained with ink, may offer a slip of papyrus upon which a short hymn has been lovingly penned. The gods do not demand perfection. They honor the sincerity in simple, well-made things. Each offering is a whisper of thanks, a small bridge between the work of human hands and the eternal cycles of nature and divinity. As the final prayers are spoken and the last, offerings are laid upon the altars. The temple gradually empties. The priest remains, tending to the sacred space with the same calm attentiveness as before adjusting offerings, refreshing incense, ensuring that the space remains not only clean, but spiritually harmonious. Outside, the world is bathed in a soft, amber glow. The colors of the earth and sky deepening with every breath, every soft footstep along the temple path. And so, as the village turns once more towards the rhythms of evening toward meals too. Be prepared. Stories to be shared and lamps to be lit. The temple doors remain open, an ever-present invitation. For devotion in this time is not confined to grand moments. It lives within the gentle repetition of small acts, within the soft, ongoing hum of daily life. The offerings are not grand feasts. The prayers are not shouted proclamations. They are soft, whispered things, flowing like the Nile constant, humble and deeply soothing dot as the light fades, and the first stars begin to prick through the darkening sky. The villagers carry with them the quiet comfort of their visit. Their steps are unhurried, their hearts a little lighter. In giving their small tokens, in lighting a lamp or offering a prayer, they have reconnected with the cycles that move both heaven and earth. It is a rhythm as old as time itself, as familiar as breath, as steady as the rise and fall of the river's tides. And so, beneath the ever-deepening canopy of twilight, the village continues its gentle shift from labor to rest, from the sun's golden glow to the soft, flickering warmth of firelight. But within, in the hearts of its people, the quiet presence of the divine lingers, carried gently into the night dot as the sun edges lower, casting its final golden rays across the village. The day's quiet labor shifts into a soft, communal hum. The air is filled with a gentler kind of energy, now not the focused stillness of the temple, nor the solitary rhythm of the fields, but the low, constant murmur of people gathering, reconnecting, and exchanging. It is the hour of the evening market, when the narrow lanes and shaded courtyards become a web of soft voices, clinking baskets and small familiar rituals of trade and conversation. There is no loud proclamation to announce the market's beginning. It unfolds as naturally as breath. Vendors, having spent the day preparing their goods, begin to set out their wares with unhurried hands. Woven reed mats are spread upon the packed earth. Baskets of dates and figs are carefully arranged, their sweet aroma mingling with the earthy scent of fresh-cut papyrus. Jars of honey glisten in the slanting light, while bundles of onions and garlic are tied with simple twine, stacked neatly in quiet, fragrant rows. The market is not a grand bazaar filled with shouting and spectacle. It is a gathering place of neighbors, of familiar faces, of shared routines that have played out across countless evenings. As families stroll slowly past the vendors, they do not merely shop. They pause to exchange quiet greetings, to inquire about a relative's health, to share a small laugh over the day's small frustrations. The air is rich with conversation, but nothing is hurried. Voices rise and fall in a gentle cadence, blending with the soft creak of wooden carts and the occasional bleat of a goat being led home through the crowd dot in one corner. A potter has set out a simple display of freshly fired bowls and jars. He kneels beside them, his fingers brushing away fine dust from their surfaces, not out of urgency, but with a kind of quiet pride. A woman approaches, lifting one of the bowls to inspect its curve, feeling the smoothness of the clay beneath her. Fingertips. There is no haggling, no raised voices, only a soft, knowing glance exchanged between artisan and buyer, a shared understanding of fair value. A quiet transaction sealed not with words, but with a nod and a small grateful smile. Nearby, a basket. Seller deftly weaves thin strands of palm leaf as she chats with a friend. Her hands move with a rhythm as natural as breath, fingers looping and tightening as the basket takes shape. Children gather at her feet, watching the pattern emerge, their eyes wide with curiosity. She pauses now and then, offering a small story perhaps, a tale of how her own grandmother once taught her the same weave beneath the same golden light of an evening sun. The story is told softly, for no reason other than the sharing of it, a thread in the ever-growing fabric of communal memory. The scents of the market are as layered as it sounds. There is the sweetness of ripened fruit, the sharp tang of fresh herbs, the earthy weight of grains and lentils poured carefully into woven bags. A small brazier smokes gently near a food stall, where flatbreads are warmed and brushed with honey, the aroma curling softly into the air, inviting passers-by with its simple, irresistible warmth. A young boy accepts a piece, his fingers sticky, his grin wide, his mother close behind, her smile indulgent as she adds a few copper weights to the vendor's scale. Trade here is not just the exchange of goods. It is a reaffirmation of ties between families, between artisans, between the land and those who shape its offerings into daily sustenance. Every transaction, no matter how small, is an echo of a relationship, a quiet acknowledgement that life is lived not in isolation. But within the soft web of community. Further along, a scribe has set up a modest stall, his papyrus sheets neatly rolled, his reed pens laid out in careful order. He offers his services to those who cannot write recording messages, drawing up simple contracts, or even composing hymns for small household shrines. A farmer approaches, asking for a document to mark a small tray of barley in exchange for a goat. The scribe listens carefully, his pen scratching gently across the smooth surface of the papyrus, the rhythm of his writing blending into the ambient hum of the market's evening breath. There are no grand announcements here, no spectacles, designed to draw attention. The market's rhythm is one of gentle repetition, of familiar exchanges and soft conversation. Gossip flows quietly from one cluster of neighbors to another, not sharp-edged rumors, but small tidbits of village life. Who is preparing for a wedding? Whose fields yielded a generous harvest? Which child took their first steps that morning? These stories weave through the crowd like the scent of incense, subtle and ever-present, reinforcing the shared fabric of life. The tools of trade are simple, yet hold a quiet beauty in their ordinariness. Small copper weights, worn smooth by countless hands, clink softly as they are placed upon balancing scales. Reeds, woven into baskets or mats, carry the memory of the riverbanks where they once grew. Clay jars, their surfaces cool and slightly rough, are passed carefully from hand to hand, the weight of grain within them, a tangible reminder of the earth's generous rhythm. As the sun dips lower, the market begins its slow winding down. Shadows stretch long across the packed earth, and the golden light deepens into a richer amber, bathing faces, goods, and walls in a soft, glowing hush. But there is no sudden end to the gathering. The crowd simply thins gently as families collect their small purchases and begin the meandering walk homeward. Vendors, too, start to gather their remaining wares, rolling up mats, tying bundles with strips of linen, their movements unhurried, as though reluctant to disturb the lingering stillness. Yet, the market leaves behind more than empty spaces. It leaves an echo, a soft, comforting residue of connection, of community drawn a little closer through shared presence. The exchanged smiles, the murmured thanks, the light laughter, they linger in the air long after the baskets have been carried home and the last copper weight has been tucked away. For in this quiet evening ritual, the village reaffirms its bonds. The goods exchanged are important, dates and lentils, baskets and pots, but it is the shared moment that carries the deeper weight. Each soft conversation, each knowing glance, each simple act of kindness strengthens the threads that hold the community together. And in this way, the market is not merely a place of trade, but a daily ceremony of belonging. As the sky shifts into the first hints of twilight, the village pathways glow softly, lit not by torches or grand lamps, but by the soft, golden residue of a day well lived. Families walk side by side, their baskets swaying gently, their conversations quiet and easy. The sounds of the market fade into the gentle rustle of palm fronds, into the soft cooing of doves settling into their nests, into the calm rhythm of footsteps along familiar paths, and as the final vendors fold away, their reed mats and the last lingering neighbors share a quiet farewell. The market gently releases the village back into the arms of evening. There's no fanfare, no abrupt ending, just a soft, shared understanding that tomorrow the same ritual will unfold again with the same quiet grace. The sun, now a sliver of amber light just above the horizon, casts a final, gentle glow over the village before slipping softly into the west. And with its departure, the market's hum gives way to a deeper, quiet pause, filled not with emptiness, but with the quiet satisfaction of connection, of simple exchanges, of life lived gently, moment by moment, in the embrace of a timeless rhythm. As the last echoes of the market fade into the soft air, the village begins its gentle shift into evening. The sun, now hovering low above the horizon, stretches its golden fingers across mud brick walls, draping the narrow courtyards and rooftop terraces in a soft, amber glow. The light is not harsh now, but warm and forgiving, casting long, lazy shadows that ripple gently across the packed earth. There is a hush in the air, not of silence, but of things winding down, of hands turning from the labors of the day to the quiet rhythms of home. In each household, the evening chores unfold like a familiar song. There is no rush, no flurry of urgency, only the steady, practiced movements of people tending to simple tasks, the same way their mothers and grandmothers once did, beneath the same honeyed sky. A woman crouches beside a small hearth in her courtyard, the glow of embers breathing softly as she arranges flatbreads upon a hot stone, their edges curling and browning with a faint crackle. The scent of baking bread mingles with the cool evening breeze, weaving through the air with a comforting presence that speaks of home. Children, still buzzing with the remnants of daytime energy, are tasked with gathering water from the village well. Their small hands grip clay jars and woven baskets, their bare feet stirring up little clouds of dust as they walk. The well is a communal place, and even this simple errand becomes a moment of shared laughter and soft chatter. The sound of water, sloshing into jars, the soft clink of pots against stone, the playful giggles echoing under the deepening sky, it all blends into the evening's gentle hum dot in a corner of a sun-dappled courtyard. A man tends to small repairs, a frayed reed mat being rewoven, a cracked pot carefully patched with a paste of mud and straw. His fingers move with slow precision, not hurried but deliberate, as the fading light glints softly off his tools. Each task, though modest, holds the quiet dignity of care, the subtle affirmation that a well-kept home, no matter how humble, is a sanctuary against the wider world dot around him. The walls of the home begin to shift in color as the sun's descent transforms ochre and clay into soft shades of rose and gold. Shadows from overhanging palm fronds dance lightly across plastered surfaces, their patterns familiar, yet ever-changing with the slow movement of the sun. The air carries the scent of earth, mingled with traces of drying linen and the faint sweetness of ripened dates, stacked carefully in woven trays, ready to be shared during the evening meal dot. Women move gracefully through these spaces, their linen garments brushing softly against their ankles as they prepare the last meal of the day. Lentils simmer gently in small clay pots, stirred with wooden spoons in slow, meditative circles. A bundle of fresh onions is unwrapped, their sharp green scent adding brightness to the air. Garlic cloves, crushed beneath smooth stones, release, their pungent warmth blending with the aroma of simmering stews. These are not hurried recipes nor extravagant feasts, but quiet, nourishing rituals, food prepared not merely to feed the body, but to gather the family close as the world exhaled into night. Nearby, a young girl hums softly as she braids strips of dried papyrus into twine, her fingers nimble and sure. Her song is not a performance, but a quiet thread that stitches the moment together, a lullaby for the evening's slow descent. Her mother, kneeling beside a basket of lentils, joins in after a while, their voices intertwining gently, rising and falling in a simple melody that has no beginning and no end. Much like the rhythm of the village itself dot as the sun's disk touches the horizon, the entire village seems to hold its breath. The light becomes softer, as though filtered through layers of silk, wrapping the world in a quiet hush. The tops of palm trees glow briefly, their fronds outlined in radiant gold, before sinking into silhouette. From distant fields, the last workers return, their steps slow, tools balanced over shoulders, their silhouettes blending into the growing tapestry of evening dot inside homes. Small oil lamps are lit, their flames flickering softly, casting circles of amber light that push gently against the encroaching dusk. The lamps are simple clay dishes with small wicks, but their glow brings a warmth that is more than physical. The lighting of these lamps is an evening ritual in itself, a quiet gesture of welcome, as if inviting the night to enter gently. With respect dot in the quieter corners, elder members of the household settle onto low stools or reed mats, their presence as steady as the earth beneath them. They observe, not with authority, but with the gentle pride of those who have seen many evenings just like this one, and who understand the quiet beauty of their unfolding. A grandmother might offer a few words of advice as she watches her daughter. Knead dough for tomorrow's bread, her voice soft, almost blending into the breeze that stirs through the open courtyard. The chores continue, but more slowly now, as if time itself has stretched, allowing each task to be performed with greater care. A boy gathers dry palm fronds to feed the cooking fire, their brittle crackle joining the evening's quiet chorus. A woman brushes dust from woven sleeping mats, laying them out in the courtyard where the air is cooler and the stars will soon appear overhead. The household's clay jars are refilled with fresh water, lined neatly along a wall, their surfaces cool and damp beneath attentive hands. And through all of this, there is conversation not loud or hurried, but a soft, continuous thread of words and shared glances. Stories from the market are retold with quiet amusement. Plans for tomorrow are discussed, not as burdens, but as part of the day's natural rhythm. Even silences between words feel comfortable, filled with the sounds of evening birds, the distant lapping of the river against its banks, the soft brushing of brooms against stone. Above, the sky shifts into deeper shades of violet and indigo, the first faint stars beginning to pierce through the fading light. The village responds to this quiet signal with small, instinctive gestures. Courtyard doors are pulled to, though rarely shut completely, allowing the evening breeze to weave through the homes. The smell of smoke from cooking fires rises in thin, lazy spirals, merging with the cooler air of night soon. The evening meal will be served a moment of togetherness, where the day's labors give way to shared sustenance and quiet reflection. But for now, there is this in-between space, this gentle pause where chores become less about necessity and more about presence. The world feels softer here, wrapped in the last light of day, cradled in the familiar embrace of tasks repeated countless times. There is something profoundly soothing in this predictable rhythm, this slow unfurling of evening preparations. It is a reminder that life, in its most enduring form, is not a series of grand events, but a continuous flow of small, meaningful gestures. Washing a pot, lighting a lamp, brushing dust from a mat, each task carries within it the quiet heartbeat of a life lived attentively, gracefully, and without hurry. And so, as the final blush of sunlight fades from the village walls and the stars above grow bolder in their shimmer, the households of ancient Egypt continue their soft evening chorus. The day is not yet done, but it is gently folding into night, each family tucked into their own familiar rhythm, connected by the shared hush that blankets the village in the golden light of a setting sun.